Welcome to Operations Unfiltered, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of influencer and talent management. I'm your host, Zuryna. Today's episode, we're diving into a topic you might not have thought about: how local government and social media collide. I had the chance to have a great convo with Councilman David Marks of District 5 in Baltimore County to get the scoop on what's happening locally and, of course, to see if our elected officials are keeping up with the digital age. If you've ever wondered how social media can shake up public service or just want the inside track on what's going on in District 5, you're in the right place. So without further ado, let's get into this week's episode of Operations Unfiltered. To start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and are you a Baltimore native, and how you got started as a councilman?
So I've been on the Baltimore County Council since 2010. I'm actually the senior member of the county council. I've lived in northeastern Baltimore County almost my entire life.
Oh,
Grew up
wow.
in, yeah. I grew up in Perry Hall.
Okay.
So I've been here for a while. And I grew up when Perry Hall was really starting to develop.
I've been here for a while. I'm 30 now, but I've lived in Perry Hall since I was maybe 14. So I've been here for quite a while. So I love the area. And I was wondering, where did you go to school? You mentioned you've been here for a long time. So where did you go to school? And did that have an impact on you wanting to get into the community service industry or service business, if you will? I hate to call it a business, but the service, civic
Sure,
service.
sure. Yeah. So I went to Perry Hall schools. I graduated from Perry Hall High School in 1991.
Okay.
I went to College Park, and I've always remained active in the community.
Mhm.
The best avenue for anyone interested in getting elected, I think, is to start small, start local.
Yeah.
And so that was, basically where I was introduced to getting things improved in the community and working for schools and parks and things like that.
Well, I've definitely heard your name throughout the community, so I would say you're definitely leaving your mark.
Oh, thank you.
And I
Yeah.
would say, what has been one of the most rewarding aspects of serving as the councilman in Baltimore County? Is it one particular initiative? Is it the countless people you get to interact with? What gives you that sense of reward? Like I've truly done something good.
I think number one is interacting with so many different people.
Hmm.
We live in a society when people are very jaded and cynical at times, but
Yeah.
there's an awful lot of good people from all walks of life who really want to do the right thing.
Hmm.
And it's been a pleasure to meet a lot of them. My district has changed throughout the years. I used to represent from Towson to Perry Hall,
Hmm.
and now I represent from Kingsville to Middle River. So I've
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I've covered about 40% of the county's population.
That
Uh,
is insane. That's a
yeah,
huge number. And that seems like it's such drastically different communities, even though they're all within the same district or similar districts. That seems like there's a lot of different, personalities, a lot of different community needs. And I'm wondering, how do you manage dealing with all of that, all of the different requirements, all of the different needs and wants of everyone?
I find that people really want fundamentally the same things. For example, I think the one of the proudest things I've gotten accomplished is open space in parks. People value open space in parks, and we've been able to advance more than a dozen parks. If you drive along Honeygo Boulevard, it's like a green belt. They want good schools, and
Yeah.
we've tried to work very hard to build new schools and to reduce overcrowding at schools. They want infrastructure, roads.
Hmm.
At the local level, you don't see the degree of partisanship you see at the federal and state levels.
For sure.
And people really, they don't want excuses.
Yeah.
This is the buck really does stop here.
Absolutely. I love that. And can you speak to some of the key initiatives that you're currently working on or that you've already have completed? I know you mentioned the green spaces, which I love. I go to Honeygo quite frequently, so thank you for all the work there. But are there
Mhm.
any other things that you guys are working on that you would love to talk to the audience about or let us know what's coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think traffic safety infrastructure improvements, they are key.
Hmm.
The Silver Spring Road corridor, where there's been a lot of crashes, where the
Yes.
roads were designed basically based on the 1950s models, right?
Hmm.
They're expressways. They're not really roads where people can walk or bike or safely
Yeah.
travel. I'm working right now to try to get a library built in the Middle River area.
I
Um,
did see that.
yes.
Can you speak a little bit more about how that came about?
Sure, sure. That's a great initiative because it's an example of how during times with limited means, government can get things done. So,
Mhm.
the developer of the Greenlee community off Maryland 43 will be building the structure, and the county will lease it from the developer for 25 years at about $800,000 a year. So that
Mhm.
allows us to get a library in that area
Yeah,
quicker, and also it helps the developer and the businesses around there because they can get new tenants coming to those stores. They'll go to the library,
absolutely.
they'll go to lunch.
Yeah, for sure. And that is I noticed that area is sort of like a food desert as well. I've
Hmm.
seen it through social media, which is something that I'll talk about later, but they've also been asking for a supermarket. I even saw that there was a petition for a Trader Joe's. Can you also speak a little bit about what's on the horizon for that, if you can speak to that?
Sure. Well, they have grocery store interested. It's just not kind of the, shall I say, I wouldn't want to use the word upscale, but the kind of the nature of a
Yeah,
Trader Joe's.
for sure.
They have kind of a mid-range grocery store that's interested in going in there. I would like to see some sort of business in there that does provide groceries in that area. I think you're going to see an announcement probably there within the next 6 months, but it is a food desert. Yeah, food deserts are in all places, right? And
For
there's
sure.
there's an example of a place that just does not have a grocery store.
I agree. I agree. And I'll be interested to see what comes along from that and what we can do to make that area a little bit more food safe, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in addition to, the food insecurities or food desert areas, traffic situations, are there other challenges that are facing your specific area? And if so, what are you planning to do to address those concerns?
One of our biggest challenges is the fact that we're a county that developed very fast in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And our infrastructure, our schools are just deteriorating, they're aging.
Mm,
So we have to replace those areas, but we also have to provide for new services and growth areas. So we have to
mhm,
kind of do both. I think you develop solutions by working with private sector, like we're doing with the library.
mhm.
People don't want to be taxed more, to be very
For
frank.
sure.
So
Yes.
yeah, there's an affordability issue.
Hmm.
So I think we're trying to find other ways of financing improvements. For example, we need to build new volunteer fire companies. So whenever someone is picked up in an ambulance, they pay fees. That money goes right into the county general fund now. We're working to return that money back to the volunteer fire company so they can use it. So it's kind of looking at things very creatively,
Yeah.
and it is about having the right amount of growth. I mean, a lot
Hmm.
of people don't want any new development, and I understand that. But on the other hand, if you don't develop, you
Hmm.
you don't you don't regenerate.
Correct.
You don't get more more diversity, more sophistication, more vibrancy, and you also don't get the revenue you need to take care of things.
Yeah.
So it's find that balance.
Do you find that you're having to, when you do have these in-person conversations, that you're having to reiterate this messaging to your constituents? And if so, are they receptive when you're telling them this? Because I know, to your point, a lot of people are like, I just don't want to see all of this growth. I miss how things were. But I do see your point, and I do see that the need for growth. So I'm wondering if this is something that you're echoing, and how are people receiving it when you're telling this to them in person?
I think once you explain things, people are more likely to understand.
For sure.
For example, White Marsh Mall. It's very interesting. If you ask people about White Marsh Mall, they'll tell you, well, they don't want any apartments going in there. They don't want any houses going there. And then you'll say to them, well, what should go there? And they'll say, well, we don't like apartments because of the traffic, but we'll take a Wegmans, which
Right.
doesn't make sense because a Wegmans brings more traffic. So
More
it's,
traffic.
yeah, you kind of walk through things with them and you say to them, look, residential development has less traffic than commercial development, and something has to go there. The last thing you want is a dead mall.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so most people, when you explain things, they'll understand you kind of have to balance.
For sure. And I love that. I love open dialogues and open communication. And I really think that I have to give kudos to you because, like I said, you are very in touch with the community. So I really appreciate that. And that brings me to my next question, which is all about social media and digital engagement. Here on
Mhm.
Operations Unfiltered, we like to talk about the logistics behind influencer marketing, management, media, all of those things. And I'm wondering, how do you and your team use social media to connect with your constituents, to connect with business owners, just the public in general?
I used to hear this rule that if you're an elected official, you should post at least once a day. And quite frankly, no, you really need to do it all the time.
Yeah.
You need to almost overwhelm constituents. with information. They can
Hmm.
choose to read it or not, or scroll right past it, but they certainly can't accuse you of not keeping them informed. So, we had a water main break in White Marsh yesterday, and we were trying to post updates as much as we could. Social media is, in general, I think, a very positive force in society. Certainly, people are more educated, they understand things. As an elected official, to be very frank, your name recognition goes up.
Yeah.
People appreciate and they understand you, and it allows you to reach folks in an unfiltered manner. I will tell you, there it is a double-edged sword sometimes. You
Yes.
have you have to be very careful about responding. And when you get a negative response, sometimes you just read it, you pause, and you walk away. People are allowed to express their opinions, and you have to
Mhm.
be very careful about going back and forth with people.
I agree with that. And I think that it shows a lot of decorum on your end because at the end of the day, we are human and it takes a lot to have negativity just spewed at you all day. So I truly appreciate that advice. And I'm wondering, has there ever been an occasion where you've had to respond to a negative comment or where you've had to respond to some not so nice things that people are saying?
Yeah, and you do it in a very kind of clinical way, right? You
Yeah.
say, No, no, thank you for your comment. Here's the
Yeah.
statistics," and you move on. And a lot of times, people will defend you if it's an unfair
Yes.
comment. They'll say, "Look, he's trying his best," or, "You're simply wrong." And
Yeah, and I
so,
think that
yeah.
honestly, that's a direct reflection of the work that you're doing because people do, I've seen it myself, people will really go to bat for you. So, again, kudos to you for the work that you and your team are doing because people will ride for you. So, I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I was going to ask, with the rise of influencer marketing, social media management, all of that, have you and your team ever worked with influencers or content creators to get messaging out about specific initiatives? Or is that something that you're interested in doing going forward if you haven't done so in the past?
Yeah, I think we'd be interested in a lot of different techniques. I think the county executive's office probably does it more because the county executive is like a CEO of all of Baltimore County.
Okay.
Um, but definitely, there's a lot of stakeholders.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, as they say, and
Yeah.
I think you can use all those tools at your disposal.
Okay, well, would you be open to doing that? You
Yeah,
specifically in the Councilman Marks. Okay,
sure.
perfect. Well, for anyone who's listening, Councilman Marks is open to working with influencers, and I truly think that with the key initiatives that you have, especially with the library opening, that could definitely be an opportunity to work with some local creators to get the word out about those initiatives. So, definitely would love to see how that can come into fruition. And then speaking of social media and the TikTok ban, the looming impact of that, the economic impact of what losing TikTok could mean for small business owners. What are your thoughts and opinions on that whole TikTok situation?
That's very interesting. I do hear these people who complain about the ownership of TikTok, right? And I think, we would prefer probably to have someone who not associated with communist China, but on the other hand, TikTok is an avenue for many people, expression and information. And, I think in the end of the day, it's going to continue. I teach in my other job. I'm a special education teacher at a high school, and honestly, I see the power of social media and that venue in particular with young people. So I think ideally different ownership, but continue its operations.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And I think a lot of people are under the same notion as that. So thank you for sharing that. And then the last question that I have surrounding social media and digital engagement is that with the rise of digital marketing, we have a lot of small business owners in and around Baltimore County. How can they leverage social media in this digital age to increase their sales or increase their brand awareness? What do you think they should be doing?
They should be partnering with like-minded companies, agencies to support one another. They should be sharing across different platforms, but they also should be involved in the community, physically involved in the community, because people
I
do
agree.
prefer that one-on-one touch that's very very traditional and very important.
And to your point, we do have the Perry Hall Business Association.
Yep.
Are there other organizations like that where small business owners could benefit from, or is that one of the main organizations in Baltimore County?
Yeah, that's one of the main ones. Yeah. And I would also get involved in those neighborhood pages, Perry Hall Neighbors, places like
Yeah.
that. The neighborhood pages are where a lot of the interaction occurs.
I second that. Lots of negative comments, but there's lots of positivity, lots of information about what's going on in our community. So definitely agree there. And then I guess, how do you see social media evolving in local government outreach, especially over the next couple of years? What is your vision, or what do you think that social media will, how will that impact the local government in the next couple of years?
I view social media as an important part of citizenship. engagement, getting projects finished, elected officials hearing from their constituents. Honestly, when you see likes on a post, that tells you you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And then the comments sometimes tell you you're doing the wrong thing.
For
No,
sure.
but social media is a fundamental part of citizenship in the 21st century. It's here to stay.
I agree. I agree. The last piece that I wanted to get into is the personal notes. How can people get involved in their community? What is the first step that you would recommend them taking?
Well, people can always contact me, right? I answer my own Facebook. I have an Instagram. I answer my own emails, so they can just go that route. But we have a budget town hall meeting coming up at Perry Hall High School. That's on March 19th. But there's these town hall meetings all around the county, and
Okay.
my colleagues are also very engaged as well. I mean, all seven of us have very active internet presence. So go up to one of us, introduce themselves, and we can at least point you in the right direction toward community associations and other ways that you can get involved.
Oh, I love that. Okay. And then the on a personal note, I'm very big on reading. I'm in my book era. I'm actually reading Why Making Others Happy is Making You Miserable. I'm also reading The Psychology of Money. So, are there any books that you have read or are currently reading that you would suggest to our readers, our listeners rather?
I like a lot of historical books. I like books about the presidents, the Robert Caro books on Lyndon Johnson. Yeah, I like historical reads. I always enjoy reading about leadership, right?
Yes.
Lincoln, Team of Rivals, things like that.
Okay. We will definitely add those to our book list.
Okay, very good.
And last but not least, how can people stay up to date with all the things that you're working on? I know you mentioned you have your Facebook. What's your email address? Is there a newsletter that people can tune into? Just give us all of your contact information so everyone can stay in touch.
Sure. Our Facebook page the handle is County Councilman David Marks, Marks. And then we are on Twitter or X, excuse me, at
Yeah.
David underscore S underscore Marks. And then we have Instagram, which is Councilman David. Actually, it's David underscore S underscore Marks. And then I have a newsletter. So if you drop me
Okay.
an email, dmarks at baltimorecounty.md.gov, that goes out every month.
Okay. And then you mentioned March 19th, I believe, is the next budget meeting, correct?
That's correct.
So
Yep.
that'll be March 19th, 6 p.m. at Perry Hall High School. So for anyone who is able to attend, I strongly recommend it. But thank you so much for the time today,
Sure.
Councilman Marks.
Instagram is Councilman David Marks. There you go.
Councilman David Marks. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. Like I said, I love giving an inside look into all the things and see how we can find synergy between different industries and social media and influencer marketing. So this is very helpful. I appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you.